Hi, it's the 21st day of the lockdown. We're all staying at home, getting bored. I'm growing a beard, as you can see. I just thought I'll share with you some ideas and try and solve some of the problems which I had faced when I joined the profession. Something which to our young lawyers may seem to be absolutely bewildering or at least confusing. It's something which they don't teach you in law college, unfortunately. So I'm here to talk about two local laws, both of which are of vital importance and both of which are completely ignored in college. They are the Gujarat Tenancy and Agricultural Lands Act and the Gujarat Revenue Code, Land Revenue Code. They used to be earlier called the Bombay Tenancy and Agricultural Lands Act and the Bombay Land Revenue Code. That's been changed in the recent past, and both these pieces of legislation are the acts under which some of the first litigation that you encounter will have arisen. They both are spoken of together because they both deal with land, but they are not limited to land. Because connected with these two laws, the Tenancy Act and the Land Revenue Code, are the rights of parties to land, and connected with that are civil suits. So, really speaking, a lot of the provisions of these two laws have a very important contribution to make in civil litigation, which usually is pending side by side with this. In this first of, I hope to have some more lectures. In these first of these lectures, which will be about 20 to 25 minutes, you can time it, I'm going to give you people we are going to take an overview of the Bombay Land Revenue Code and the Bombay Tenancy Act. Now, one law is much older than the other. The Bombay Land Revenue Code, or now they have renamed it the Gujarat Land Revenue Code, is of 1879. A piece of British legislation which, like most of the laws made at that time, has stood the test of time. It's a very cool piece of lawmaking. It makes provisions for all kinds of things. But above all, you must remember, it is a law made by a superior ruling power over the citizens of our country. It was essentially made to collect and regulate the collection of land revenue. This must be emphasized, will be emphasized all throughout the present address. It was meant for fiscal purposes. You will have judges telling you and judgments telling you that the Bombay Land Revenue Code does not give title to land, does not recognize title to land. It is meant for fiscal purposes. Fiscal, of or relating to money. What is that fiscal? That fiscal purpose was to regulate the collection of land revenue from the coffers of the poor Indian farmer to that of the British or Crown. But it was a really well thought out piece of legislation, and its proceedings, the procedures prescribed therein, were considered or have been found to be so accurate that what was earlier a liability, namely the liability to pay land revenue, which attached itself to your name being there in the land records, became after some time an acknowledgement of your right to that land. Remember, the Bombay Land Revenue Code does not really give rights. It acknowledges liabilities. But the methodology was so perfect that it was found that if the Bombay Land Revenue Code says that you are the person principally responsible for paying land revenue, chances are you are the owner. And therefore, even while the courts repeatedly chastised lawyers, saying this is not a proof of ownership, it is only for fiscal purposes, the entries made under the Land Revenue Code have got immense initial presumptive value in the rights of parties to the land concerned. The other piece of legislation is the Bombay Tenancy and Agricultural Lands Act 1948, now the Gujarat Act. Because our part of Gujarat was part of the greater bilingual state of Bombay, there is a similar and parallel act called the Vidarbha and Kutch Tenancy Act, which applies to the Kutch area of the Gujarat state. Essentially, they are pretty much the same. So today I am going to talk about only the Gujarat Tenancy and Agricultural Lands Act, which is the successor act to the Bombay law. This law has been enacted to control the agricultural activities of persons who own land. It has been made after 1956 the tool of huge political and social reform, because by virtue of the provisions of this act and by virtue of the provisions of the notifications, on and from 1956, a legal fiction was created whereby old tenures were abolished and the person who was at that time tilling the land was made the owner. This is a huge thing because it replaced the conventional relationship of landlord and tenant farmer, which used to be usually the relationship of the owner of the land and the farmer, who was usually poor, who was a sharecropper, that is to say, who tilled the land, and what he got from it was only a share in the crop. He was a sharecropper. The landlord was construed to be kind of fat cat oppressor, and the aim of all the land reform laws, and there are very many laws, abolition of tenure laws, the aim of it was to ensure that the poor farmer, well, poor I mean as in financially poor, would ultimately become the owner of the land. These were the provisions of the Act. Now, other provisions of the Act also are important. I'll talk to you about them broadly. But today, I want to clarify the confusion which arises in litigations which reach us in the High Court and elsewhere by virtue of which are under these two acts. So the reason for the present address is to try and highlight the similarities and the differences between the two. So the Land Revenue Code deals with the relationship of the individual vis-a-vis the state with reference to his land. Essentially, this is it. It decides or it lays down provisions as to who should be the person primarily responsible for paying revenue, how should the ownership of some of the rights of the land between a citizen and the government be dealt with, and it makes certain important provisions with regard to inquiries about how the initial question of the land records should be addressed by the revenue officers. On the other hand, the tenancy law, largely, there are notable and big exceptions to it. The tenancy law has replaced the conventional civil law, call it the Rent Act or the Transfer of Property Act, with regard to the relations between the landlord and his farmer, his tenant. That would otherwise have been a lease dispute, a Transfer of Property Act dispute, but that has been done away with. The law intervened in 1956 and said that if you are in possession of the land in 1956, you became the owner on fulfillment of certain conditions. It also provided that after 1956, a person must either cultivate the land personally, or if he inducts a tenant, then the tenant will become the owner of the land. I'm saying this very superfluously because there are huge and notable exceptions. But these two litigations are such as reach us in the civic centers of big cities. But they take place in the revenue courts. The Bombay Land Revenue Code and the Tenancy Act proceedings take place in the revenue courts. Now, I'll give you the example of proceedings under the Bombay Land Revenue Code. A person is litigating with his brother, sister, siblings, cousins about the ownership of the land. The first line of defense or offense in this is the record of rights maintained at the village level. So what you'll find in proceedings under the Land Revenue Code is that parties are fighting to get their names inserted or to get somebody's name removed from the land records. These proceedings, after going from the Mamlatdar to the Deputy Collector to the Collector, reach the Special Secretary. Keep this word in mind. He is a very important man. He is actually the state government, but he is the top revenue decision maker in the hierarchy of revenue decision makers in our state. He gets all kinds of matters for lands which are not more than a few hundred rupees worth to lands worth tens of thousands of crores. These matters, after the Special Secretary, you cannot file a suit about them. The only thing you can do is come under Articles 226, 227 to the High Court of Gujarat. Therefore, small and big matters, when they do the Land Revenue Court route, they end at the state government level, they end with the Special Secretary, and from there the orders are challenged under writ petitions. Under the Tenancy Act, the proceedings again would start at the same level, that is to say the Mamlatdar level. But there, usually there is a list between parties. Now what is this, a list between parties? The list between parties is that one person is saying, oh, I am the tenant, and you please acknowledge me as such. And the landlord is saying, no, this guy has just come up. Recently, he's never been cultivating. His dad has never been cultivating. People are fighting about this. Those proceedings go to the Mamlatdar, and he decides whether or not a person is a tenant. On the basis of that, the matter goes up to the Deputy Collector. Remember this. The hierarchy under the Tenancy Act is Mamlatdar, Deputy Collector, and then this is very important. It goes to the Gujarat Revenue Tribunal, not the Special Secretary. So when you get a new matter and the order to be challenged is that of the Revenue Tribunal, chances are it is under the Tenancy Act, and chances are it's got something to do with the tenancy of the land. On the other hand, If it's a special secretary's order, chances are it's the revenue code. So at first blush, your job is to see what is the nature of proceedings. Is it under the Tenancy Act? Is it under the Land Revenue Code? Under the Tenancy Act, usually it will be fighting to become or to deny somebody the character of a tenant, or what we in Gujarat call Ganotia. In fact, the Tenancy Act is popularly known as the Ganodhara. Much turns on these decisions because if a person is acknowledged as being the tenant, even after a bitter 25, 30, 40-year-old fight, he then becomes the owner of the land. And when he started fighting, the land would be valued at a few hundred or thousand rupees. Now it would be valued at a few lakh or crore rupees. So these two laws deal with land and the rights to land, but they operate in different fields. So when you get a case, first you see which act. Now sometimes there are cases where both the acts tend to operate within each other, but those are far more complex, and I'll tell you about them a little bit later. For now, I just want to point out another very important feature of these two laws. One is Section 65 of the Bombay Land Revenue Code, and the other two sections are Section 43 and 63 of the Bombay Land Revenue Code. Section 65 of the Bombay Land Revenue Code talks about agricultural use permission. A person who is an owner of the land cannot put it to non-agricultural use without applying for and obtaining permission from the collector. If he does not do that, several consequences follow. Depending on the nature of his right in the land, the consequences follow. That is one thing. Under the Tenancy Act, Section 43 and 62, did I say 63 earlier? Just a minute. Yes, 63. Section 43 and 63. Now, remember I talked about 1956, and when by a fiction created by law, the tiller became the owner. In fact, it is called Tiller's Day in 1956. He became the owner. But he did not become the full owner of the land. He became the owner of, and here comes another term which you will find again and again, he became the owner of a restricted tenure, or that famous phrase in Gujarati, Navi Sharat. Navi Sharat means land which has come to you with a restricted tenure. You are the owner, but there are several conditions attached to your ownership. The first of which is that it is non-transferable. Though you are the owner, and usually one of the incidences of ownership is transferability, a land obtained by a tenant under the Tenancy Code, Tenancy Act, is non-transferable. It is impartible, that is to say, you cannot partition it. And these are the conditions imposed by Section 43 upon the Act. Section 63 also imposes similar conditions where whatever the tenure of the land is, you might be the full owner, you could transfer it. Section 63 says that transfer to a non-agriculturist is barred. Now I think we should spend a little time on these two sections. Section 43 applies to lands given by virtue of this act to the tenant at the end of the proceedings under this act. So he becomes the owner by way of new tenure, Navi Sharat. Of course, there is nothing like Juni Sharat, though we call it, but a lot of the proceedings under the Act are to change the tenure of the land from new tenure to, actually it is not old tenure, from new tenure to unrestricted tenure. But people talk about Navi Sharat, Juni Sharat. So that's another very fertile field of litigation which comes to us when we are just starting. So restrictions under 43 are imposed upon lands, attached to the lands, in the hands of people who have been given land under this Act, under the Tenancy Act. Section 63, on the other hand, talks about transfers to non-agriculture is barred. Any person owning agricultural land, be it so that it's been in his family for the last 100 years, still cannot transfer the land to a non-agriculturist. Now this is a very important feature. It was originally enacted to ensure that fertile, food yielding land is not put to, is not taken away from growing food crops. That time has passed, the Green Revolution has come and gone, and these sections have become very, very important revenue generating tools for the government. Though they are touted as measures of governance and control, the fact is that the removal of new tenure and the permission to transfer the land to non-agriculturists is a huge revenue spinner for the government and a fertile area for litigation which reaches the High Court. So what the state government does is that if I am a tenant, Ganotia, who has got land which is subject to conditions under Section 43, I want to transfer the land to a non-agriculturist, it will say, okay, under these provisions, this is the value of the land. You pay me 100% of the value of the land paid to the government. So basically, if the land is worth 100 rupees, the government will say, you can sell it, but you have to give me 100 rupees. Now, if you want 100 rupees, you have to give 100 rupees to the government. You sell the land at 200 rupees. So effectively, the price, half the price of the land will go to the government. It's not illogical, nor is it really unjust, because had it not been for the intervention of this code, the land would have gone back to the landlord. The tenant would have not got anything. So there are these premia under the lands, under the Act, which are being charged. Under 63, if an agriculturist wants to sell land, he can sell it without any problem to a non-agriculturist. But if you to an agriculturist, that is to say, if one farmer wants to sell it, he can sell it to another farmer, but he can't sell it to a person who is not a farmer. Now, as to who is a farmer, there is a section in the Tenancy Act which defines who an agriculturist is, and it is worth almost one more hour of a lecture alone to explore who is the agriculturist, but this is neither the time nor the scope of that discussion. So if an agriculturist transfers the land to a non-agriculturist, the Act steps in, there are proceedings, there is penalty, there is even forfeiture of land. That's another fertile area of litigation. So I'll just sum up today's episode, if I can call it that. So when the proceeding comes to you, if it's under Land Revenue Code, it is usually an individual fighting with the government or with somebody else with regard to his rights in the land. Now, why do I stress these laws? Because a fight under the Bombay Land Revenue Code is really meaningless unless there is civil litigation. So you may be very happy with your name being entered in the land records, but if you have not litigated in a civil court, it will be left high and dry. So this is really parallel proceedings to proceedings in the civil court. But remember, Land Revenue Code, individual versus the government, barring some notable exceptions. Tenancy Act, two people litigating, two estates, landlord, tenant, litigating against each other, with the government being a not very impartial referee. Why do I say not very impartial referee? Because if the result goes in a particular way, the landlord loses the land, the tenant loses the land, and the land becomes, horrible words in land law, Sarkar Khalsa, meaning land which the government did not own. It suddenly, by a stroke of the pen, becomes the owner of that land. So Land Revenue Code replaces ordinary record keeping. Tenancy Act replaces ordinary civil law which governed the relationship between landlord and tenant. I think for now this is enough confusion, or if I may say so, enough information. Hereafter I may address issues of these two laws individually, where we'll go through individual sections of this, of course touching upon the interplay between the two laws and other civil laws. Stay safe. Goodbye.